welcome to the Production Talk podcast with me, Jan of mixartist.com.au. In this podcast series, we celebrate the modern way of producing music. We want to talk about all things related to songwriting, recording at home, and music production. So if you produce your music at home, this is the place to be. Please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends. This is the Production Talk podcast, episode 11. Welcome back to the Production Talk podcast. It's absolutely fabulous to have you on board today. Last week, we looked at the typical music production timeline and realized just how many different jobs you self-producing musicians have. Songwriting, composing, writing lyrics, arranging, recording, programming, editing, mixing, mastering, publishing, distribution, promoting, and marketing. Over the next few episodes, we are going to dive into more detail on these topics. And today, I'd like to talk more about the first few jobs. So I thought about the most knowledgeable and most experienced songwriter I know. Too many to choose from. I picked Chel and Tom, also known as TK, for this interview because I admire their flow state-like, effortless production workflow. I've worked with both of them in the studio many times, and there's never any dramas, no frustration, no uphill battles when they're around. Nowadays, Chel and TK produce their own music from home, the way many of us want to, but not always know how to. Both Chel and TK have academic musical qualifications, but I think the main reason they work so well together is that they have mastered the music production relay race, which I explained in last week's episode. And if you're not entirely sure what I'm talking about here, please go back to episode number 10 and have a listen. Okay, now let's get to the good stuff. Here's my interview with Chel and TK of Sky Eater. With me today is Chel and TK from the band Sky Eater. Thank you very much for making the time today. I've known you for a long time, and I've seen quite a bit of musical development and experimentation to all kinds of awesome directions. And I hope to talk to you today about your recent productions and hopefully get some good knowledge out of you of how you best approach something complex like you do with just two people. So thank you for being on board.
Pleasure.
Thank you for making the time. So, Chel, please tell us, what are you currently working on?
We are currently working on recording a new album, and we're very lucky because we have the problem of having so much material that we've been trying to figure out the best way to package it all and record it all and present it to the world. And this next album is going to be more of our down-tempo kind of trip-hop influenced music. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you basically have a pool of songs to choose from, and then you picked some for this album, or?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful position to be in.
It is.
Okay, so how big is your pool of songs, roughly?
I'd say there's at least 20 at the moment, maybe more.
We've got enough for a trip-hop album, a reggae album, and then maybe part of a drum and bass album. So there's quite a few songs there, and they're being written all the time.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about songwriting, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So are they all collaborative ideas, or do you sometimes come up with an idea yourself, right? Do you write an entire song yourself, or do you pass it forward and back? How does it work between the two of you?
It depends what would constitute a song. If you're talking in the traditional sense of melody and lyrics, then Chelsea composes the songs. But being a kind of hybrid electronic acoustic act that augments a live performance of technology, I think that part of the composition does come down to the production and the beat making and the sound design as well. So I'd like to think that it is a collaborative process throughout.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of collaboration that goes on.
Okay, so Chelsea, you might start with a melody and some lyrics, and then you bounce ideas forward and back between the two of you. Do I read that right?
Yeah, they seem to pretty well come out formed most of the time with like melodies and lyrics and structures, mostly kind of there. Yeah, bits do change once we start recording. once we do the pre-production kind of stuff, move things around, and then Tom adds so much in terms of dynamics and, yeah, all the beautiful atmospheric, extra sparkly stuff is his department.
That sounds good.
I mean, sometimes I will just have had a rare piece of time on my hands, and I'll just play around with some drum beats or extract some loops from some drum recordings that I've done, or just find a groove and put it down, and then I'll just stem it out and chuck it into Ableton Live. And then we've got maybe got a low pressure gig that's long, like a 3-set gig at the market. Sometimes we play at the farmers market. We use that as a bit of a platform to experiment with new material. So I'll chuck the loop down. Chelsea will start playing some chords and loop that. I'll come up with a bass line off her chords, and she's very, as most horn players are, very, very quick to find melodic hooks and start stacking up harmonies and grabbing themes. And then it will develop over a course of gigs to the point where it feels like a formed song, and then we'll start doing pre-production recordings off the back of that.
So you're saying that you're writing songs as you play live gigs sometimes?
We do that sometimes.
That's phenomenal.
It's part of the process.
Well, talking about, killing two birds with one stone, that's a fantastic idea.
And people in the audience have no idea exactly what they're watching.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. That's really good. Okay. And in your experience, how much time does it take you for, develop a song from the idea until, the arrangement is set and it becomes a bit more of a solid structure? Does that differ a lot?
I mean, it depends how one would quantify that. It's finding the time in a very busy schedule of gigging and teaching and promotion and all the other things that you have to do as a musician to survive. If we had a week of no activities and we had an idea, then we would probably have it pre-production recorded and arranged within a couple of days.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, I mean, once it gets down to the nitty-gritty, what I'll generally do is I'll put whatever drum loop that we were using, whether it's something I've created or something that Chelsea's found that she likes, I'll put it into DAW and just get her to come in and play some guide keys and then do a guide vocal and then leave it with me. And then I'll just kind of shuffle things around into a rough shape of how I'd like the song to go, and then think of what additional layers I can add. And I usually will start off with just a synth bass and some MIDI keys. I've got some nice Arturia keys and organs in there. I record some electric guitar and just start sketching stuff, mapping it out, layering up extra drum hits and bits of sound design and find a good shape for it. And then I'll play it to Chelsea, see if she likes it. And if we kind of roughly agree on how the song's going, the tempo and the vibe, then we'll just make a plan to start laying down final recordings for the parts. And once that we're at that stage of the process, it all happens very quickly.
That sounds amazing. It sounds really like you're a well-oiled machine in some ways.
Yeah, I think we've got a pretty good workflow going.
Yeah, it's like even some of the guide vocals we're keeping. The Chelsea's just spontaneously laid down, and they've got such beautiful articulation and expression within them that it seems like almost forced to try and recreate. And if it's well captured, we'll keep those. But I'm pretty much in charge of the rhythm. Chelsea's in charge of the melody, and we share the harmony a little bit, depending on who's got the ideas for the chords.
Yeah.
And
then you would write all the horn parts, I would assume?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Like, you're very, like a song factory, you're pushing them out.
Totally
just
feel
like
like I'm a song factory.
Song factory. So talk about being a song factory. What do you do? Do you ever suffer from writer's block? Have you get moments where just nothing seems to work or ideas just don't seem to come?
I don't really get that.
Lucky you.
I usually try to work with, if I feel like writing a song, then I'm like, whatever I'm doing, I'll just try and do it. And sometimes I'll be, for example, we went hot air ballooning at the start of this year. We were on the bus to get into the hot air balloon at like 5 o'clock in the morning. and I had a song idea. So I just sang it into my phone, like on a bus full of people on the way to the hot air balloon.
Oh, great. And that turned into a song.
Yeah, it's a song.
Is this going to be on the next album?
That one is probably going to be on the reggae album, but we have been performing it live.
Which one's that?
It's The Purest You.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful kind of, it's got a real kind of sluggy soul beat, you know, like a real, the kick and the snares laying far behind the beat. It really rolls along beautifully. And
oh, no, it's not that one.
Oh, it's not that one?
It's a song that's about losing someone that you love. It's about losing a pet friend, actually. And it's about like, it's really about the beautiful life that you share with other like people and creatures that come into your life. And I can't even think of how it goes right now.
And that idea came to you as you were sitting on the bus there.
Yeah.
And then you just pulled out your phone and sang it down straight away. And fantastic. And when you listen back to those recordings of ideas, do you connect back to that idea immediately? Or do you sometimes find that you can't make that connection you had at the beginning? Does that happen?
I find I can usually make the connection. Yeah. And then I think after that we also had one of those more jammy kind of gigs, and we just put down some chords and I tried singing that idea over the top and it worked.
I think there's something to be said for being courageous and not being too afraid or not taking yourself too seriously. It's kind of like you've got to take yourself seriously enough to do something good, but if you take yourself too seriously, you don't do anything.
That's right.
And I find that, you know, that over the years I've written lyrics, they normally manifest in the form of some sort of like rhymes or ragamuffin rap stuff. And I'll agonise over trying to say something concise and poignant. And I'll really agonise over the type of language I use and how I'm presenting it, try not to be too preachy or and it takes me a very, very long time to write lyrics. And because they're raps, it's a lot of lyrics. It's like a whole song in 16 bars. Whereas Chelsea's is a really inspiration to me because she'll just she'll take a story or an experience and just explain it really, really beautifully. And people resonate with that and connect with it very quickly because it isn't so contrived.
It's more of a spontaneous way of writing lyrics rather than planning it and thinking it all out.
Yeah, it's very sincere.
Yeah. Is it possible we talk about overthinking? Is that what it could be?
That's me. That's why I'm the producer.
Yes. Look, I've come across that point many times when it comes to music. And, a lot of people get stuck into a point, let it be writing songs or performing or sometimes recording or production where, overthinking can lead to actually poor outcomes in the end. So
trying to force it when you're not in the mood. Like if I don't feel like doing something right then, or like if I don't feel inspired to write something, then I just won't. I just let it go and just wait until another time when I go for a walk in nature or just happen to be doing something random and the thoughts come to me, then I sit down and write.
So when your mind is off it, in some ways, if you distract your mind with something else, then inspiration comes to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it does come at random times sometimes.
I think staring at a blank piece of paper isn't particularly inspirational.
Yes.
And I've spent many hours over the years, like going, right, I'm going to write a song now, looking at a piece of paper. Whereas if you're looking at, some dolphins frolicking in the ocean, or getting on a hot air balloon, or taking a walk through nature and smelling the wonderful aromas of the eucalypts.
Or just sitting and looking at the sky or the way the leaves are blowing in the wind.
So you take inspiration from nature a lot, and that's really good. So do you know when you suffer from overthinking? Can you control this? Can you actually say, okay, I'm got to stop doing this now and distract myself to something else?
I've definitely. I don't do a lot of. I don't write a lot of lyrics at the moment. I do a lot of the production side of things. So I've tried to develop an area of discipline where I don't spend too much time and overthink what I'm doing. Just you have a listen, what does this piece of music need to drive the groove, and what does it need to do, need to flesh out the soundscape and the harmony, and is what you are doing, what I'm doing, my role, is it adding anything to the music? Is it supporting the message and the vocals? Because if you go way back to ancient Indian, traditional music, the singing is the highest of all art forms. So everything else that happens is either emulating or supporting it, and that's something that I always try and bring myself back to, so you don't get too carried away. Of course, in contemporary music, the beat and the rhythm is very, very important. People like to hear and feel something that's going to move their body, but ultimately, people want to have an emotional experience. You've got to facilitate an emotional response by what you're doing. So you really have to put the emphasis on the lyrics, on the feeling, and the meaning of it, and try and support that with the instrumentation. So I try to do that, not get too carried away in audio trickery.
Yes, I can see that. And, the technology that we use today can lead you to clicking too much, I think, and staring at screens and plug-in windows for too long, Yeah. Tom, what you said, I can really relate to this. I see that as well when I mix, that I sometimes get caught in a corner where I start to overthink. And I usually identify that by just realizing, looking at my productivity, and if I don't get much done in a long time, that's usually because I'm overthinking.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's time to have a break.
I tend to I'll have a pass at arranging the songs, and then I'll just bounce out some rough material, put it on the Google Drive. Next time we've got a long drive to a gig, we listen to all of the tracks like it's an album. I'll just make a hot mix, like do a really rough master chain on the master bus, and then we'll just listen to them and objectively in the car, and have a think about what it needs, what we like, what we don't like, where the arrangements could be cut down or extended. And then I'll have another pass where I record a lot of instrumentation. I'll set my guitar amp up, and I'll have it set up for a few days. I'll do all the guitars, and then I'll go through and edit them and try and make them fit within the context. And then I'll record some bass and do the same, and then we'll do another rough bounce the next time we've got a long drive. We listen to objectively. So I try not to do too much repetitive listening until we're at the final mix stage. So we can stay objective about the distinction between songwriting and arrangement and mixing and mastering.
Yes, because that makes perfect sense.
There is quite a big grey area between the two when you're producing electronic music, or it's like a hybrid what we do. So some of the composition is production, and you've got to find a distinction between what you're doing with the production and the composition and what you're doing to mix it and polish it up at the end.
Okay. So do you sometimes find yourself starting to use mixing tools too early?
Yes. And I'm trying. It's a constant battle trying to find the discipline and find the line.
And that can distract you from what actually needs to be done right now.
Yeah, and that's the point where I turn it off. Just bounce it, walk away.
Yes.
Don't listen to it for a few days. Then we take a drive and a casual listen.
Yes.
And we listen to the vocals, and we listen to the song and think about the shape of it, and zoom out.
Zoom out, I like that. I use the trick as well. Sometimes I see really clearly when I'm in the middle of a mix and, start to get a bit fatigued. I often see really clearly what needs to be done if I have a break. Walk out, get myself a cup of tea from the kitchen and listen from a distance, sometimes even through the closed door. That often gives me the insight to really understand what's actually going on. So a change of perspective, I find, is gold in many situations.
There is good value in that. I've got a second set of monitors that are slightly cheaper that I don't mind cranking up a little bit, and so I often will go out of the room and do some weeding in the garden or wash the dishes, and I'll just crank up the old KRK monitors and let the track blast in the other room, and just see how I feel about it from somewhere else. Yeah,
and I think I also perceive things differently when my mind is taken off it. So when I'm occupying myself by making myself a cup of tea, my mind is actually on something else. And it's like my subconscious digests the song rather than the active mind, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And that really helps me to gain some clarity. Chelsea, I've got one more question for you. How do you know whether a song, when you write a song, whether it's a good song or not? You know, you probably have some songs that come together easier. When do you know that you've written a good song? What measures, what benchmarks are there to write a good song? I know that's a difficult question.
So many potential answers to that question. For me, I think the best songs are written kind of in a shorter space of time, all in one go with not too much like overthinking again. We're going to talk about that word.
That's okay.
Yeah. And I haven't thought of a really good, a different analogy for this yet, but for me, like the good ones come out kind of like doing a good poo.
Oh, that is so funny. You know, I used to play in a band ages ago, and the singer, Stefan, who also played bass, he just couldn't shut up about the one fact that one of our best songs we ever played, that idea came to him at the dunny, when he was sitting on the dunny. He just couldn't stop telling everybody that story.
Well, yeah, I don't mean writing them all while you're doing that, but just
funny.
The feeling of satisfaction and completeness.
Okay. And when it comes to lyrics, you know, do you have you got certain subjects or themes that you like to address in your lyrics?
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a big focus for me on connecting with nature and patterns of connecting with other people, other humans, and empathy comes up a lot. Empathy for others and empathy for ourselves with whatever we're going through. So, yeah, I think a lot of the time I'll write a song when I'm feeling a little bit challenged about a certain thing, and then it's kind of like a song to teach me how to deal with that situation.
Okay. So it becomes almost like an outlet to, you know, deal with the situations, for example? Yeah.
And there's a lot of writing that I do that doesn't turn into songs, but it serves that same purpose.
Okay. In your own words, you know, when you write many songs, what makes it that describes a good song in your eyes? How do you put some songs in the good basket and others don't end up there?
I think the good ones just end up sticking somehow. I don't know.
I just started to think about your analogy again when you said that. It doesn't really work in that context.
The sticky ones are the good ones.
I don't know, like, there's ones that are currently in Chelsea's mind that she's maybe written more recently that are quite catchy. We maybe jammed the chorus out at a gig and people really enjoyed it. And like simple messages, the simpler is usually the better. Like there's one that's the chorus line is, I have everything I need to be happy right here. Repeated, the chorus line, and it's a really beautiful chord progression, lovely major sevenths, non-diatonic major sevenths, which are really juicy and beautiful and comforting to listen to. So I think the message and the harmony that Chelsea's written with that all like together really quite a satisfying feeling. But you know, sometimes I'll be racking up the beats and Chell will come up with a few chords and she'll be like, oh, I need some lyrics, and she'll just rifle through these books and phone recordings and just find something she hasn't used yet and just give it a go.
Oh, cool.
And try one or two, and then one of them feels good, like the syllables and the delivery just seem to work over the rhythm or the chord progression, then it will just stick. And you might need to write an extra verse to make it work. And you know, usually within about all of 15 seconds, she's got a great horn line and a hook. I don't know. There's
I'm
like
available if anyone wants help writing songs.
Okay. Look, what advice would you give other musicians who might be struggling with songwriting or, you know, get stuck in songwriting and not getting results?
I would say don't be afraid to just be honest and write about things that are meaningful to you and your experience that you're going through in life at the moment. Because I think a lot of the time, well, especially in the past in society, we're encouraged not to talk about our vulnerabilities so much. But I'm a huge advocate for everyone talking about their experience and sharing it, because a lot of the time people have gone through the same thing you've gone through. And the only way to find that out is to be open and start the conversation. So, yeah, I'd say be courageous and
That
open.
is some great advice. I really like that. That takes a bit of courage.
It does.
To put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And share part of your soul and your feelings. But yeah,
it's very scary sometimes doing that.
Can be scary, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a negative experience with sharing some of your most personal feelings?
Not that I know of.
Very good. Cool.
I think that if I was going to play a game of Jeopardy with Chelsea's lyrics, I would say, what happened and how did it make you feel?
As a band, you're a little bit special in the sense that you literally cover every single stage of the production cycle, from songwriting to playing the musical performances, to recording it, to programming, to editing, mixing. I don't think you've mastered yet, but that's probably just a question of time. So looking at what needs to be done, the many hats we need to wear today, as a band, you literally, between the two of you, you cover all of them.
We have a lot of hats.
We have a lot of hats and we don't have a lot of spare time.
I can imagine, yeah. Do you ever find wearing so many hats, does it take away from just being a musician in any way?
I suppose it can. I think over time of experience, you become more thick-skinned to the things that you do, and are able to start to draw boundaries between them. If I go out and I take my bass guitar and I'm playing a gig of Jesse Morris, I just get lost inside my bass guitar and I play beautiful bass lines and I don't think about anything else. If I'm recording Chelsea's guide tracks for an upcoming album, I'm just an engineer. I'm just passively finding the best way to capture and help facilitate good performances. And then when we start to build the tracks, every step of the way, I kind of have to put a different hat on and make sure that I'm not wearing them all at once, because you can kind of bamboozle and overwhelm yourself if you're thinking too far ahead about what you're doing. So, yeah, I think with time and experience, you'd have divisions and boundaries, and you'd kind of learn to turn them on and off like a tap, and they will blur at points.
Yeah.
But experience teaches you that if you are able to draw those boundaries, you're going to make your life a lot easier, a lot less stressful, a lot less confusing, and you'll probably get a much better result. And there are things like mastering. I like to get someone else to do that, just to have a set of objective ears, because I have worn so many hats on the way through, and I have to make sure that I'm not in my own little delusional world, and that what we've created is in some way relevant, and the mixing is balanced, and it will work for some level of commercial context, and it will convey the emotion that was intended. So I have to get the tracks past Chelsea first. Mm-hmm. Because she will often be the one that's delivering the emotional content and the story. So if the tracks support that and she gives me the thumbs up, then I send it to my mastering guy.
That's very good. So in some ways, Chell, you are the emotional quality control for Tom's mixes.
Yeah.
Did I understand that right?
Yeah, she's like the gatekeeper, the emotional gatekeeper.
Oh, that is fantastic. If you look at how people decide to listen to a song or to skip it, that's very rarely a conscious decision. That usually it's a gut feeling. It's an emotional response. You either like the song or you don't. You don't even know how you make that decision. It just happens.
Yeah.
So why not make good mix decisions from that same emotional place? I think that's a really wise idea, and that's a great workflow.
You got to have gut stuff, and there also are pretty good parameters to think about. If you're writing a song that you want people to listen to on streaming, or to be commercially viable, your beats got to come in pretty early. Your vocals, if they don't come in the first 30 seconds, you've lost them.
Yes.
You got to be pretty quick in with some sort of hook and some sort of rhythm, and you've got to hit the chorus by a minute. That's kind of a rough area that I think about when I'm looking at them pragmatically.
Yes, it's that's right. People say that listeners have a shorter attention span these days, and therefore you can't afford a long intro anymore, which in some ways is actually sad, but it's literally just the reality of what it is. Yeah.
We save those for the gigs.
Yes, okay, that's cool.
You can be more self-indulgent and extend the arrangements in the gigs and give someone a different experience to the album, more improvisation, or breakdowns, dub sections, really go nuts with the live performance. But with the recorded versions, we'll often create something and then go, okay, well, we need to make a radio edit. We love having that many horn lines and that extra chorus in there, and we love having that breakdown, but the song's 5 minutes 40, and that's nearly a Bohemian Rhapsody.
We just trim it down to 5 minutes.
Yeah, some of them end up being about 4:20.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
coincidence. Oh, that's great. And Tom, now that you've learned to wear all these hats, what would be your advice for, let's say, less experienced home producers? Should they try to wear all these hats one after another, or are there any areas where you would recommend to maybe just get help? How would you?
I'd say having a good community of musicians and or producers and music lovers around you is a very valuable thing. When you're in the engine room or, cooking away at these tracks and exploring the boundaries of your technical expertise and your creativity, you can sometimes get lost inside a little bubble. And like with instrumental performance, what feels good doesn't always sound good in that moment. So, if I'm in a state of primal ecstasy with a djembe drum in a drum circle and I'm beating the hell out of the thing, it feels great. It's a wonderful release. But if I recorded that and put it on Spotify, I don't think many people would want to listen to it. There's a difference between cathartic musical experience and kind of some sort of self-indulgent experimentation, and something that where you're looking to create something that will in some way, like I said, facilitate an emotional response or some sort of catharsis for someone else, or be soothing or beautiful to immerse yourself in. So I think having a good idea of whether you're in the studio and you're going down the wormhole to explore the doors of perception with your equipment, and then shifting into a mindset where, okay, I've explored that. Now, how can I use that in a context that will be useful to support a song, or how will I reach out to people and make them feel something with these tools that I've equipped myself with? So it's definitely looking through different eyes.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a good way to sum it up. There was a lot to take in there right now. There was a lot of wisdom in what you just said. Tell us more about the future for Sky Eater. You're working on this album. Have you? How far are you with that at this stage?
We've got a few more final vocal takes to put down, and then the harmonies, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there may be one or two solos, and I'm looking to find an opportunity to record some vibraphone of Hugh Jones. And he lives quite far away now. He's a very good friend, a very talented musician, but we've included some good guest musicians on this album. We're not playing absolutely everything like the last few. So we've got Peter Hunt from Cooey, Stuart Curry from Airstructure Firewalk. We've got Elena Marchigot from Jesse Morris Band, she plays with Felicity Lawless now, and Aya Trumpet from Pineapple Laser and the 420 Sound. So we're looking to have like a smattering of wonderful guest performers, most of which we've recorded. I think we've got
Annie
de Groot, on the
Annie
viola.
de Groot.
There's some very haunting viola on.
Really amazing viola.
There's like this kind of haunting slow motion Bollywood line in one track, and she's playing some very mournful sounding viola on a track Chelsea wrote about cutting the end of her finger off of an axe. So I think
Annie and I actually had a writing session together.
I think, Chell, you need to explain that to our listeners what happened there.
Oh yeah,
we
last year we can laugh. Yeah, it was pretty horrific for a sax player to be chopping wood with a short-handled axe, which everybody at home, I can recommend that you get a long-handled axe if you're chopping wood, and be really, really extra careful. But I did slice through the end of my fingertip with the axe.
Ouch.
And I couldn't play for 3 months. But I did write some really good songs. Well, I think they're good.
How is your fingertip nowadays?
It is amazing. It regrew. So I learnt that if you cut the end of your finger off anywhere from the fingernail upwards, it can regrow like a lizard tail.
Or an octopus tentacle.
Or an octopus tentacle. Yeah.
What a story. It's actually not the first story about injuries on this podcast series, but regular listeners would know about this by now. We can make this a thing, I guess.
I think that out of all of the tracks, sometimes we have a listen with some friends just casually as well of the progress on the tracks. Out of all the tracks, that one... when you listen to music with other people, you get a sense of empathy. Like when you sit with another person, it's almost like you hear it through their ears. And so we've sat with other friends and listened to the tracks, and they all have a different feeling to them. But this one just made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It's the slowest, darkest tune out of the lot, but it's full of emotion. And that, when I feel also,
it turned into quite an uplifting song as well. Like for me, listening to it, it's like it starts out all dark and really, really emotional, but when it hits the chorus, it's just like just being lifted up on a cloud.
When you feel those butterflies in your stomach and the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, you know you got a good song.
Yes, well said.
And it's amplified by the company you're sitting with. If they feel that, you feel that. Mm-hmm. And that I think that's important. Friends, musicians, producers, music lovers, if you play it in their company and you feel a swell of emotion in the room, you're onto it.
Excellent. Yeah. So you, in some ways, you do product testing with small groups. You play it to friends you trust, and you get some feedback about your music from friends, which
I suppose it's kind of informal, really.
Yeah.
Like we've had some friends around for dinner having a jam, and we've been listening to other music all night in the background, and I'll just slip a few tracks on.
In business terms, that's product testing, but obviously when you do it in a casual way, it can be just as effective, because other people who listen to the song for the first time often have a certain clarity, I believe, that you may not have when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And you're so mentally tangled up in a large production. So that's a really effective way. I have to admit that I sometimes do the same thing when with my art, when I mix. That I play a mix to other people, like my kids, for example. And it's not really about what they say afterwards. I just like to watch people as they listen to my work, and it tells me a lot.
Yeah.
When I see people at the edge of their seat, bobbing their heads, I know I don't even need to know what they think about it. I already know it's good. But if people start to get distracted, if my boy runs away and doesn't want to listen to the end of it, then I know I haven't done a good job yet. But kids are very good at sensing whether it's a good song or not. I found kids are really good at that.
Daddy, there's too much 4 kilohertz in the vocals.
Yeah, that's a great example, because literally, it's the complete absence of overthinking. Kids have never learned to overthink. All they have is their emotional response to music, and that's literally the only one that counts, at least in my book, at the end of the day. So it's really good to do that.
Yeah.
I think we digressed on a little bit of a tangent there about fingers. You originally asked us about what the plans are.
Yes, let's steer back to that, please.
And so we've got 10 tracks, one of which is already released as a single with video clip, the Wind Blows underwater video clip. And we've got another 9 tracks of unreleased material that we're working on. I'd say that we've got about 5 or 6 lead vocals and a couple of bits and pieces to record, then it's mix time. This probably will be over the next few months because we have quite big schedules. And our aim is to release it on vinyl later in the year. And once the country further settles down from the problems we've been having with the pandemic, our plan is to reinstate a tour that we had planned for Adelaide and Western Australia. We had it planned for, I think, April 2020, and of course the world shut down for a while there. So we'd already bought flights, we'd done press releases, we'd done all the right things. I had guest lectures booked at Adelaide, SAE, and various gigs and good venues in Western Australia, and it would have been our first appearance there. So I think it would be good to release that and use a tour across the country as a vehicle to promote it.
Well, knock on wood, hopefully it will go ahead, hopefully sooner than later. Let's see how we go. If you're okay with this, I would like to maybe put a link into the podcast notes to the release song. What's the title of that song again?
Wind Blows.
Wind Blows. Thank you for reminding me. The video is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Enjoyed that a lot. So Can't wait for that to be out. But we'll definitely put a link into the show notes as well.
Cool.
So that people can visit you. And have you got a website? Where would people find out more about Sky Eater?
Yeah, we have a website, www.skyeater.com.au. And yeah, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all the streaming platforms. You can listen to the material that we've already released.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will be able to see you live soon.
All the gig dates are on our website as well.
Okay, so gigs are happening again, and hopefully the big Australia tour later this year. Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Yes.
Yeah, let's see how we go with that, but I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time today and sharing your wisdom. That's really insightful for me, and I really appreciate you dedicating your time to this. So thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. Thanks
for having us.
Thank you. Wow, this was absolutely phenomenal. Chel and TK are an amazing music production team, and I admire how they both navigate each other's strengths and weaknesses and relay their production tasks. But they also don't hesitate to outsource tasks to external specialists, whether that's Bollywood-style strings or mastering. They truly are a small music production team working like a well-oiled machine. Next week, I'd like to focus on mixing and mastering. Most of you already know the technical aspects, so I'll be brief on the scientific side. I believe it will be much more valuable to talk about the artistic side, and I'll explain how it feels like to be in the mixing zone. And just before we finish up, let me please ask you for a favor. In your podcast app, right next to this episode, you'll find a share button. As a self-producing musician, you're probably a member of musician groups or forums. Can you please click that button and share this episode to these groups and forums for me? Maybe write a sentence or two? That would absolutely make my day. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week when we speak about mixing. Bye for now.